Judging people by appearance is one of the oldest habits society refuses to let go of. It happens quietly, often without words, yet its impact is loud and lasting. The moment we look at someone, our minds begin to form conclusions. We notice clothing, posture, skin color, job roles, and small details that seem harmless, but quickly turn into assumptions about intelligence, status, and capability. In this story, the black janitor becomes the center of that judgment. Before he ever touches the piano, before he even speaks, the room has already decided who he is and what he is worth. To them, he is invisible at best and unqualified at worst. No one expects him to understand music, let alone master it. This is not because of any evidence, but because of the image he carries in their eyes. The setting makes this judgment even sharper. A grand ballroom filled with wealthy, polished individuals creates an unspoken hierarchy. Everyone there fits a certain mold. Expensive suits, confident smiles, and a shared sense of belonging define the space. Then comes someone who does not match that image. The janitor's presence feels out of place to them, not because he does not belong as a human being, but because he does not align with their expectations of talent and success. His uniform becomes a label. It tells a story they are too quick to believe, a story that says he cleans floors, not plays instruments, that he serves, not shines. This kind of thinking reveals how deeply appearance is tied to perceived value. People often confuse presentation with ability. They assume that talent must look a certain way, sound a certain way, and come from a certain background. When someone breaks that pattern, it creates discomfort. Instead of questioning their own beliefs, many choose to dismiss the person. That is exactly what happens in that room. The laughter is not just about the challenge. It is about reinforcing a belief system where only certain people are allowed to succeed. The billionaire's mockery reflects this mindset clearly. His challenge is not meant to be taken seriously. It is a performance designed to entertain those who already agree with him. When he says, "If you can play this piano, I'll marry you," he assumes no one outside his circle could possibly rise to it. The statement carries confidence, but also blindness. He does not see the individuals around him as complex human beings with hidden stories and skills. Instead, he sees roles. Wealthy guests are worthy of respect. Staff members are not meant to step beyond their assigned boundaries. For the janitor, this moment is not just about music. It is about being seen. Every day, people like him move through spaces where they are overlooked. Their work is necessary, but their presence is ignored. They hear conversations, but are not included. They witness moments, but are not acknowledged. Over time, this kind of treatment builds a wall between how they see themselves and how the world sees them. Yet, beneath that surface, there are skills, passions, and experiences that remain hidden simply because no one thinks to look deeper. When he steps forward, he challenges more than just a piano. He challenges the idea that identity can be defined by appearance. His action forces the room to confront their assumptions. It creates a moment where the usual order is disrupted. The person they dismissed becomes the focus. The role they assigned to him no longer holds. This shift is uncomfortable, even threatening, because it exposes how wrong they have been without ever realizing it. Judging by appearance often feels natural, but it is learned behavior reinforced over time. Society teaches people what to value and what to ignore. Media, culture, and personal experiences all shape these patterns. Once formed, they are hard to break because they operate automatically. People rarely stop to question why they think the way they do. They rely on quick impressions to navigate the world, even when those impressions are incomplete or unfair. The danger of this habit is not just that it hurts individuals, but that it limits everyone. When people are placed into boxes, their potential is restricted. Opportunities are given based on image rather than ability. Talented individuals are overlooked, while others are praised for simply fitting the expected mold. This creates a cycle where stereotypes continue to exist because they are never challenged. Moments like the one in this story become rare, even though they should be common reminders of how much lies beneath the surface of every person. Arrogance of power and wealth often grows quietly, shaped by years of control, privilege, and the absence of challenge. It does not always appear as loud aggression. Sometimes it shows up as subtle confidence that slowly turns into superiority. In this story, the billionaire stands as a clear example of how wealth can distort perception. He is used to being admired, obeyed, and surrounded by people who rarely question him. Over time, this environment convinces him that his position is not just earned, but proof of his higher worth. His words carry weight in the room, not because they are wise, but because of who he is. When he speaks, people listen. When he jokes, people laugh. This constant reinforcement builds a sense of untouchable authority. The challenge he throws out, "If you can play this piano, I'll marry you," is not simply a statement. It reflects his belief that he controls the narrative of the room. He assumes he can define what is possible and what is not. There is no expectation of being proven wrong. The idea that someone outside his social circle could rise to his challenge does not even cross his mind. This is where arrogance becomes dangerous. It creates a blind spot, a gap between reality and perception that continues to grow as long as it is never tested. Wealth often creates distance, not just physically but emotionally and mentally. The billionaire is separated from the everyday struggles that shape most people's lives. He does not have to prove himself in the same way others do. His success shields him from doubt, and his status protects him from criticism. Over time, this isolation leads to a narrow understanding of the world. He begins to see life through a limited lens, where success follows a predictable path and talent belongs to a certain class of people. Anyone outside that path becomes invisible or irrelevant. This mindset is reinforced by the people around him. In the ballroom, the guests respond to his challenge with laughter, not because they fully understand the situation, but because they follow his lead. Power creates influence, and influence shapes behavior. No one wants to disrupt the comfort of the moment. No one wants to challenge the person who holds authority. As a result, arrogance is not just an individual trait, but a shared atmosphere. It spreads through agreement, silence, and the desire to belong. The billionaire's mockery is not random. It is built on assumptions about who deserves respect and who does not. He sees the janitor not as a person with potential, but as a symbol of lower status. This assumption allows him to make the challenge without hesitation. In his mind, there is no risk. The outcome feels guaranteed. This is the core of arrogance. It is not just confidence in oneself, but certainty that others cannot rise to the same level. It dismisses the unknown and replaces it with false security. Power also changes how people interpret their own actions. The billionaire may see his challenge as harmless entertainment. He may believe he is simply creating a moment of fun for the room. This self-justification hides the deeper issue. When someone holds power, their words carry more impact than they realize. What feels like a joke to them can feel like humiliation to others. The imbalance of status makes it difficult for those on the receiving end to respond. Silence becomes the only safe option, even when the situation is unfair. At the same time, arrogance often masks insecurity. The need to assert dominance, to control the room, and to define others can come from a hidden fear of losing that control. By placing himself above everyone else, the billionaire protects his identity. He reinforces the idea that he belongs at the top and that no one can challenge his position. This creates a fragile confidence, one that depends on others staying beneath him. The moment someone rises unexpectedly, that confidence is threatened. The presence of the janitor introduces that threat even before he takes action. His willingness to step forward disrupts the order the billionaire is used to. It challenges the idea that power belongs only to those who hold wealth. This is where arrogance begins to crack. It is forced to face something it cannot easily dismiss. The unknown becomes real, and the certainty that once felt unshakable begins to weaken. Arrogance thrives in environments where there is no accountability. When people are never questioned, they stop questioning themselves. They lose the ability to see beyond their own perspective. This creates a cycle where power continues to reinforce itself, and humility becomes rare. The billionaire's behavior is not just about his personality, but about the system that allows him to exist without resistance. The The moment he issues his challenge, he is not expecting transformation. He is expecting validation. He wants the room to confirm what he already believes, that he stands above others, that his judgment is correct, and that the world follows the rules he understands. This expectation reveals how deeply arrogance is rooted in his identity. It is not just how he acts, but how he sees the world around him. Hidden talent in unexpected places often goes unnoticed, not because it does not exist, but because no one takes the time to look for it. People tend to associate skill and brilliance with certain environments, backgrounds, and appearances. When someone falls outside those expectations, their abilities are often overlooked or dismissed entirely. In this story, the black janitor represents that overlooked potential. His daily role does not invite attention or admiration. He moves through the room quietly, doing work that others depend on but rarely acknowledge. Yet beneath that ordinary routine lies something extraordinary, something no one in the room has imagined. Talent does not follow a fixed path. It is shaped by personal experiences, passion, discipline, and moments of solitude that the world never sees. The janitor's ability to play the piano did not appear suddenly in that ballroom. It is the result of time, effort, and dedication that happened far away from the spotlight. Perhaps he practiced in empty rooms after hours, or learned from old recordings, or carried a love for music since childhood that he never had the chance to share openly. His environment may not have supported his talent in obvious ways, but it did not erase it either. Instead, it remained hidden, waiting for a moment when it could finally be expressed. The idea that greatness can exist in unnoticed spaces challenges the way people define success. Society often celebrates visible achievement while ignoring the quiet journeys that lead to it. People expect talent to come with recognition, titles, or status. When those markers are missing, they assume the talent is not there. This creates a gap between perception and reality. Many individuals carry skills that remain invisible simply because they do not fit the expected image of success. The janitor becomes a symbol of that reality, a reminder that ability is not limited by occupation or social position. In the ballroom, no one considers the possibility that he might possess such skill. Their attention is focused on those who already hold status. This selective attention reinforces the idea that talent belongs to a certain group. It narrows the scope of what people are willing to see. The janitor exists within their field of vision, yet he is not truly seen. His presence is filtered through assumptions that prevent anyone from recognizing his potential. This is how hidden talent remains hidden, not by choice, but by the limitations of others' perspectives. When he steps forward, he breaks through that barrier of invisibility. His action alone is enough to shift the energy of the room. It creates curiosity, doubt, and even discomfort. People are forced to reconsider what they thought they knew. The moment carries tension because it challenges a deeply held belief. If someone like him can possess such talent, then the entire system of assumptions begins to fall apart. This realization is not easy to accept, especially for those who have built their understanding of the world on clear divisions between who is capable and who is not. Hidden talent often requires courage to reveal itself. It is not easy to step into a space where one is not expected or welcomed. The janitor risks judgment, ridicule, and rejection simply by approaching the piano. His decision to move forward reflects a quiet confidence, one that does not rely on external validation. He does not need the room to believe in him before he acts. This inner strength is part of what makes hidden talent so powerful. It develops independently, without constant approval or recognition. It grows in private, shaped by persistence rather than praise. There is also a deeper emotional layer to hidden talent. For many individuals, their abilities are closely tied to their identity. When those abilities are ignored or underestimated, it creates a sense of being unseen. The janitor's talent is not just a skill, it is a part of who he is. By stepping forward, he is not only demonstrating what he can do, but also claiming his right to be recognized as more than the role assigned to him. This moment becomes an act of self-expression as much as it is a display of ability. The audience's reaction plays a crucial role in revealing how society responds to unexpected excellence. Surprise, disbelief, and even resistance can appear when hidden talent comes to light. People may struggle to reconcile what they are witnessing with their previous assumptions. This tension highlights the gap between expectation and reality. It shows how deeply people rely on familiar patterns, even when those patterns are incomplete or inaccurate. Hidden talent reminds us that potential is not always visible on the surface. It exists in places that are easy to overlook, carried by individuals who are often underestimated. The janitor's presence in the ballroom becomes a quiet challenge to everyone around him, pushing them to look beyond appearances and question the limits they have placed on others without even realizing it. The moment of public humiliation turned truth begins with confidence that feels unshakable. The billionaire stands in a position where he believes he controls not only the room, but the outcome of what is about to happen. His challenge is delivered with ease, almost casually, as if the result is already decided. The laughter that follows strengthens that belief. It echoes through the space, confirming that everyone shares the same expectation. In that moment, the situation feels safe for him. There is no risk, no uncertainty, only the assurance that his words will remain unchallenged. What he does not realize is that this very confidence sets the stage for his own humiliation. Public humiliation often comes from a sudden shift in power. It happens when the person who appears strongest is proven wrong in front of others. The impact is amplified by the presence of an audience. What could have been a private mistake becomes a shared experience, witnessed and remembered by many. In this case, the audience is already engaged, already invested in the outcome. They are not neutral observers. They have taken sides, even if silently, by laughing and agreeing with the billionaire's assumption. This makes the turning point even more powerful because it does not only challenge one person, but the entire group's belief. When the janitor steps forward, the mood begins to change, though not immediately. At first, there is confusion, perhaps even amusement. Some may think it is part of the joke, an extension of the entertainment. The idea that he might actually succeed still feels distant. This delay in realization is important. It shows how deeply rooted their assumptions are. Even when faced with a direct challenge to their expectations, they hesitate to take it seriously. The possibility of being wrong is not something they are ready to accept. The truth begins to emerge not through words, but through action. As the janitor approaches the piano, the room grows quieter. Attention shifts, not because they expect brilliance, but because they are curious about what will happen next. The billionaire, who once held complete control of the moment, now shares that space with someone he had dismissed. This alone starts to weaken his position. Control is no longer absolute. It is uncertain, dependent on what unfolds in the next few seconds. The transformation from humiliation to truth is gradual, but undeniable. It is carried by each note that fills the room, each moment that contradicts what everyone believed. The janitor's performance becomes a form of evidence, something that cannot be ignored or explained away. It does not rely on argument or persuasion. It simply exists, clear and undeniable. This is what makes the moment so powerful. Truth revealed through action is harder to reject than truth spoken through words. For the billionaire, the experience is deeply personal. His authority, which once felt secure, begins to slip away. The same audience that supported him now witnesses his mistake. Their silence replaces laughter, and that silence carries weight. It reflects a shift in perception. The person who was once seen as superior is now exposed as flawed. This exposure creates discomfort, not only for him, but for everyone who shared his belief. It forces them to confront their own role in the situation. Public humiliation often brings with it a sense of vulnerability. It strips away the layers of confidence that protect a person's image. In this case, the billionaire is no longer just a powerful figure. He becomes someone who made an incorrect assumption, someone who underestimated another human being. This shift is significant because it humanizes him, but it also highlights the consequences of his arrogance. The moment is no longer under his control. It belongs to the truth that has been revealed. The janitor's role in this transformation is not aggressive or confrontational. He does not need to challenge the billionaire directly. His actions speak for him. This contrast between quiet confidence and loud arrogance makes the moment even more striking. It shows that truth does not always need to be forced. Sometimes, it simply needs the opportunity to be seen. Once it is visible, it changes everything. The audience becomes part of this transformation as well. Their reaction evolves from amusement to attention and then to realization. They are not passive observers. They are witnesses to a shift in understanding. What they once accepted without question is now proven false. This realization can be uncomfortable, even unsettling, because it challenges their sense of judgment. It forces them to reconsider how they view others, how they assign value, and how easily they can be influenced by status and appearance. The moment of humiliation does not come from failure alone. It comes from the contrast between expectation and reality. The greater the gap, the stronger the impact. In this story, that gap is wide. The billionaire expected complete control, unquestioned authority, and effortless validation. Instead, he faces a situation where his assumptions are exposed in front of everyone. The truth does not attack him, but it stands in clear opposition to what he believed. Leaving no room for denial. Breaking stereotypes and social barriers begins with recognizing how deeply they are built into everyday thinking. Stereotypes are not always loud or obvious. Often, they exist in quiet assumptions, in the way people categorize others without realizing it. They shape expectations about who belongs in certain spaces, who is capable of certain skills, and who deserves attention or respect. In this story, those invisible lines are clearly drawn inside the ballroom. There is an unspoken understanding of roles. Wealthy guests occupy the center, while workers remain in the background. Talent, intelligence, and refinement are assumed to belong to one group, while the other is expected to serve and remain unnoticed. The presence of the janitor challenges those boundaries simply by existing in that space. He is already crossing a social line by being physically present in a room designed for a different class of people. Yet, as long as he stays within his expected role, no one feels threatened. The system remains intact because it is not questioned. It is only when he steps beyond that role that the barrier becomes visible. His movement toward the piano is more than a physical action. It is a symbolic step across a line that was never meant to be crossed. Social barriers are often maintained through collective agreement. People may not openly discuss them, but they follow them through behavior. The way individuals speak, interact, and respond to each other reinforces these boundaries. In the ballroom, the guests share a common understanding of what is acceptable. Their laughter at the billionaire's challenge is part of that agreement. It reflects a shared belief that certain people are not meant to rise beyond their assigned positions. This belief creates stability for those at the top, but it limits everyone else. When the janitor moves forward, he disrupts that stability. His action introduces uncertainty into a system that depends on predictability. The guests are forced to confront a situation that does not fit their expectations. This is where stereotypes begin to break. They rely on repetition and consistency. When something unexpected happens, it creates a crack in that structure. The mind struggles to process what it sees because it does not match what it has been conditioned to believe. Breaking a stereotype is not always a loud or dramatic act. Sometimes, it is a simple demonstration of truth. The janitor does not need to argue or defend himself. His presence at the piano is enough to challenge the assumptions that have been placed on him. As he begins to play, each note becomes a form of resistance against the labels assigned to him. His performance contradicts the idea that talent belongs only to a certain class or appearance. It shows that ability is not limited by occupation, background, or social status. The impact of this moment goes beyond the individual. It affects everyone in the room. The guests are forced to reevaluate their understanding of the world. The clear divisions they relied on begin to blur. The person they dismissed becomes the focus of admiration. This shift is powerful because it reveals how fragile stereotypes can be when confronted with reality. What once felt certain now appears incomplete, even flawed. Social barriers often persist because they are rarely challenged in visible ways. Many people who are capable of breaking them do not get the opportunity or the platform to do so. The janitor's moment at the piano becomes significant because it is public. It is witnessed by those who hold influence and those who reinforce the existing system. This visibility amplifies the effect. It turns a personal act into a collective experience, one that cannot easily be ignored or forgotten. There is also a sense of courage involved in breaking these barriers. It requires stepping into spaces where one is not expected and often not welcomed. The risk of rejection, judgment, or failure is always present. The janitor's decision to move forward reflects a willingness to face those risks. It shows a belief in his own ability that exists independently of how others see him. This inner confidence is essential for challenging social limits, because external validation is often absent in such moments. At the same time, breaking stereotypes does not immediately erase them. The shift in perception may begin in that moment, but the larger system takes time to change. The guests may recognize their mistake, but their deeper beliefs may still linger. This is what makes such moments both powerful and incomplete. They open the door to change, but they do not guarantee it. The process of breaking social barriers continues beyond the single event, shaped by how individuals choose to respond afterward. The janitor's performance becomes a reminder that human potential cannot be contained within fixed categories. It exists beyond labels, beyond roles, and beyond expectations. His actions challenge not only the people in the room, but the broader idea that society can define individuals based on limited information. By stepping forward and revealing his talent, he creates a moment where the usual rules no longer apply, where the lines that once divided people begin to lose their meaning. Respect, dignity, and real worth are often misunderstood because people tend to measure them through visible markers like wealth, status, or appearance. In many social settings, respect is given automatically to those who hold power, while others are expected to earn it through effort, obedience, or silence. This creates an imbalance where dignity becomes conditional, something that can be granted or taken away based on how closely a person fits into accepted standards. In the ballroom, this imbalance is clear. The wealthy guests receive attention and admiration without question, while the janitor moves through the space without acknowledgement. His role defines how others treat him, not his character or his abilities. Dignity, however, does not come from external approval. It exists within a person, shaped by self-respect and a sense of identity that is not dependent on how others behave. The janitor carries that dignity even when it is not recognized. His quiet presence reflects a kind of strength that does not need validation. He does his work without demanding attention, yet there is a depth to him that remains unseen by those around him. This contrast between how he is treated and who he truly is highlights the gap between perception and reality. Real worth is often hidden beneath layers of assumption. People assign value based on what they can immediately observe, which leads to incomplete and often inaccurate judgments. The janitor is seen as someone whose contribution is limited to physical labor, but this view ignores the complexity of his life, his experiences, and his talents. Worth cannot be measured by a single role or a single moment. It is built from a combination of skills, character, resilience, and the ability to grow beyond circumstances. When society reduces a person to one aspect of their identity, it fails to recognize their full value. The billionaire's behavior reflects a misunderstanding of respect. He assumes that his position gives him the authority to define others. His challenge is not just about testing ability, but about reinforcing a hierarchy where he remains at the top. In doing so, he overlooks the basic principle that respect should be mutual. It should not depend on status or power, but on the recognition of shared humanity. When respect is one-sided, it loses its meaning and becomes a tool of control rather than a reflection of genuine regard. The turning point in the story begins to reshape these ideas. As the janitor steps forward and reveals his talent, the balance starts to shift. The same people who ignored him are now forced to pay attention. Their perception changes, not because the janitor has suddenly gained worth, but because they are finally able to see what was always there. This moment exposes how easily respect can be withheld and how quickly it can be redirected when assumptions are challenged. Dignity becomes more visible in this shift. The janitor does not demand recognition or react with anger. His response is measured, grounded in confidence rather than confrontation. This approach reinforces the idea that dignity is not about proving others wrong through words, but about remaining true to oneself regardless of how one is treated. His actions speak with clarity, showing that self-worth does not need to be announced. It reveals itself through consistency and authenticity. There is also a deeper lesson in how respect is restored. The audience, once dismissive, begins to acknowledge the janitor in a new way. This change reflects a growing awareness, an understanding that their previous behavior was based on incomplete judgment. Respect, in this sense, becomes a response to truth. When people are faced with undeniable evidence of someone's ability and character, they are compelled to adjust their perspective. This shift may not erase their earlier assumptions, but it creates space for a more balanced view. Real worth is not something that can be given or taken by others. It exists independently of external recognition. The janitor's value does not increase because the audience begins to admire him. It remains constant, grounded in who he is rather than how he is perceived. This idea challenges the way society often operates, where approval is treated as a measure of value. It suggests that true worth is stable, unaffected by temporary opinions or changing circumstances. The story also highlights how easily dignity can be overlooked when people focus only on surface-level traits. The janitor's uniform becomes a barrier that prevents others from seeing beyond it. This narrow focus limits their ability to connect with him as a person. It reduces their understanding of his identity to a single dimension. When that barrier is broken, it reveals how much was hidden behind it, not because it was intentionally concealed, but because no one chose to look deeper. Respect, when it is genuine, recognizes the full humanity of others. It does not depend on achievements, wealth, or social position. It is expressed through acknowledgement, fairness, and the willingness to see beyond appearances. In the ballroom, this kind of respect is initially absent, replaced by assumptions and hierarchy. The janitor's actions begin to change that dynamic, not by demanding attention, but by presenting a truth that cannot be ignored.